Welcome to Whispers of Ink. I'm Machado de Assis, and now I will read one of my stories.
Let's start with the books on vacation, which is part of my novels collection. Chapter 1. The schoolmaster was told that someone wanted to speak with him. "Who is it?" he asked. "He says you don't know him, sir," replied the black servant. "Let him come in." Everyone in the classroom turned their heads toward the hallway door, curious to see who would walk in. I couldn't tell you exactly how many boys were there, but there were quite a few of us. It wasn't long before a rough-looking man appeared. His skin was dark from the sun, his hair long and tangled, without a trace of a comb. He wore wrinkled clothes. I don't remember the exact color or fabric, but I think it was brown cotton. We all waited to hear what he had to say. I was especially curious, because the man was my uncle, a farmer from Garatiba. We called him Uncle Zeka. Uncle Zeka walked up to the teacher and whispered something. The schoolmaster asked him to sit and looked at me. I think he asked a question, because Uncle Zeka started talking slowly, trying to explain everything clearly. The teacher pressed him for more, and finally, after a few more exchanges, he turned to me and said loudly, "Master Jose Martins, you may leave." The joy I felt was stronger than my surprise. I was only 10 years old. I loved to play, not to study. A visit from home, and not just anyone, but my father's own brother, who had arrived the night before from Garatiba, could only mean something fun. A party, a trip, or some kind of celebration. I ran to get my hat, shoved my reading book into my pocket, and hurried down the stairs of the school, a small 2-story building on Rua do Senado. In the hallway, I kissed Uncle Zeka's hand, as was proper, and we walked out into the street. I walked beside him, taking small steps and looking up at his face. He didn't say a word. I didn't dare ask anything. Soon we reached my sister Felicia's school. He told me to wait, went in, climbed the stairs, and then came back down with her. The three of us started walking home. Now my happiness grew even more. There must be a celebration at home, why else would both of us be called away? We walked ahead, sharing guesses and questions. Maybe it was Uncle Zeka's birthday. I turned to look at him. He was staring at the ground, probably to avoid tripping. And so we walked on. Felicia was 1 year older than me. She wore flat shoes tied with 2 ribbons that crossed over the top of her foot and ended in a bow just above the ankle. I wore worn-out Cordovan boots. Her socks matched the ribbons on her shoes, while my wide trousers fell loosely over the top of my feet. They were made of cotton fabric. Now and then, we would stop walking. She paused to look at dolls in the windows of haberdasheries, and I looked at parrots in cages outside stores, birds that climbed up and slid down a metal chain attached to their legs. I often recognized the birds, but at that age, watching a parrot never got boring. Uncle Zeka was the one who always made us move again. "Come on," he would say in a low voice, and we kept walking until something else caught our attention. But the truth was, the real excitement was waiting for us at home. "I don't think it's Uncle Zeka's birthday," Felicia told me. "Why not?" "He seems a bit sad." "Not sad, he just looks grumpy." "Oh, grumpy, sure. But people who are celebrating birthdays look happy. Then maybe it's my godfather's birthday. Or my godmother's. But why did our mothers send us to school today? Maybe they didn't know. There must be a big dinner. With dessert. Maybe we'll even dance. We made a deal. It could be a party without anyone's birthday. Maybe it was something like winning the lottery. It also crossed my mind that it could be election day. My godfather was running for city council. Although I didn't fully understand what a campaign or council was, I had heard so much talk about his certain victory that I believed it was already won. I didn't know the election was on Sunday, and today was Friday. I imagined marching bands, cheers, applause, and us kids jumping, laughing, and eating coconut candies. There might even be a show at night. The thought made me a little dizzy. I had once gone to the theater and ended up falling asleep. But the next day I was so happy I couldn't stop talking about it, even though I hadn't understood a single word of the play. I had seen a lot of things, that's for sure. Eric's chairs, thrones, long lances, scenes changing right before my eyes, moving from a room to a forest, and from the forest to a street. Then there were the characters, all of them princes. That's what we called anyone wearing silk shorts, buckled shoes or boots, a sword, a velvet cape, and a hat with a feather. There was dancing, too. The ballerinas and dancers spoke with their feet and hands, switching places and always smiling. Then came the crowd's cheers and claps. I already wrote claps twice. That's how well I knew them. Felicia, to whom I told about the show, didn't seem too excited, but she didn't say no either. She would go to the theater. And who knows, maybe we could even have a show at home with puppets. We were still talking like that when Uncle Joe told us to wait. He had stopped to talk to someone. We stopped and waited. The idea of the party, whatever it might be, kept going through our heads, more mine than hers. I imagined 30,000 things, none of them finished, all coming so fast and mixed up that I couldn't tell them apart. They might even have been the same thing over and over. Felicia pointed out 2 boys wearing red caps, carrying canes, and that reminded us of the Knights of St. Anthony and St. John, long gone. Then I told her about the bonfires in our backyard, the fire snakes we burned, the little wheels that spun, the toy pistols, and the dances with other kids. If we could have the same thing now. Oh, I remembered it would be a great chance to throw my schoolbook into the fire, and hers too, with the sewing lessons she was learning. No way, Felicia said. I would burn mine. Dad would buy another one. Well, while he buys, he'll just play at home. Learning is so boring. That's what we were talking about when we saw Uncle Joe and the stranger right next to us. The stranger grabbed our chins, lifted our faces toward him, looked at us seriously, let us go, and said goodbye. He said, 9 o'clock? He'll be there. Let's go, Uncle Zecca told us. I wanted to ask him who that man was. He looked kind of familiar, though I couldn't place him. Felicia felt the same way. Neither of us could figure out who he was, but the promise of being there at 9 o'clock made everything else less important. It must be a party, maybe even a ball, even though by 9 o'clock we were usually already in bed. But this time would be different. Would stay up late. When we reached a muddy puddle in the street, I took Felicia's hand and we jumped over it together. The leap was so strong that my book almost fell. I glanced at Uncle Zecca to see what he thought of what I did. He shook his head in disapproval. I laughed. She smiled, and we kept walking along the sidewalk. That day, strangers were everywhere. This time, they were on donkeys, and one of them was a woman. They came from the countryside. Uncle Zeka went to talk to them in the middle of the street, after telling us to wait. The animals stopped, probably because they knew him, or so I thought. Felicia disagreed with a look, but I laughed and defended my idea. I wasn't even that sure, to be honest. Everything felt light and fun. Whoever it was, we waited for them to finish talking. We watched the two country people carefully. Both were thin, but the woman was thinner than her husband and younger too. His hair was gray. We couldn't hear what they said to Uncle Zeka, but we saw the man look at us with curiosity, then whisper something to his wife, who looked at us too, with pity, or something close to it. In the end, they parted ways. Uncle Zeka came back to us, took each of our hands and tried to say something. But the words seemed stuck in his throat. Without a word, he led us forward toward home. Our house was on the next street, close to the corner. When we turned the corner, we saw the door of our house covered in black cloth. That sight filled us with shock. Without thinking, we stopped and turned to look at Uncle Zeka. He came to us, took each of our hands and tried to speak again. But he couldn't. He just walked, pulling us gently with him. When we arrived, the doors were halfway closed. I don't know if I told you already, but our house was a small shop. People were gathered in the street, curious. Heads peeked out from the windows across the street, and on the sides, all watching us come closer. There was a bit of commotion when we arrived. I had my mouth wide open, just like Felicia. Uncle Zeka pushed one of the half doors, and the three of us stepped inside. He closed it again behind us, walked down the hallway, and we followed him into the dining room and then the bedroom. Inside, near the bed, my mother sat with her head in her hands. When she heard we had arrived, she jumped up, came to hug us, and cried out through her tears, "My children, your father is dead." The shock was great, even if the news felt confusing and unreal. I didn't have the strength to move, and I was afraid to try. Dead how? Dead why? I only write those questions now to keep the story going. At that moment, I didn't ask anything, not even to myself. I heard my mother's words echo inside me, and I felt her deep sobs. She took us by the hand and led us to the bed where our father's body lay. She made us kiss his hand. At first, I couldn't believe it. Despite everything, I didn't understand what had happened. But the sadness and silence of the people around the bed slowly made it real. My father had truly passed away. This wasn't a holy day off, not a celebration, not a few short or long hours away from school and its punishments. That such a beautiful dream should vanish and make my grief heavier as a Santis, I can't say for sure. Maybe it did, maybe it didn't. Better not to guess. There was my father, lifeless. No more jumping, no dancing, no laughter, no music bands, those things were gone too. If someone had told me as I left school why they were picking me up early, I would have known my joy wouldn't have entered my heart at all, since it was now being kicked out, one punch at a time. The funeral took place the next day at 9 in the morning. I'm sure that friend of Uncle Zeka was there, the one who said goodbye on the street and promised to come at 9. I didn't see much of the ceremony. I remember a few figures, just a handful, dressed in black. My godfather, who owned a dock, was there, and his wife too. She took me to a little room in the back to show me some pictures. As we were leaving, I heard my mother crying, the sound of footsteps, and some muffled voices from people lifting the coffin. I think someone said, "Turn to the left, hold it steady like this." Then in the distance, the carriage rolled away, followed by the mourners. There went my father and my vacation. A day off, without any joy. No, it wasn't just one day. It was 8 whole days of sadness, during which I sometimes even missed school. My mother sat sewing black clothes for mourning between visits from neighbors who came to offer their sympathy. I cried too. I didn't see my father at the usual times, didn't hear his voice at the table or by the counter, or his sweet words to the birds. He loved birds very much, and had 3 or 4 in cages. My mother stayed quiet most of the time. She only really spoke to people who came to visit. That's how I found out my father had died from a stroke. I heard this news many times. The visitors would ask about the cause of death, and she would tell everything again and again, the time, his last gesture, the moment it happened. He had gone to get a glass of water by the kitchen window. I memorized every detail because I heard it so often. Still, the boys from school kept trying to peek into my sadness. One of them even asked when I would come back. When I repeated the question to my mother, she answered, "Saturday, my son. The funeral is on Friday. Maybe it's better to return on Monday." "But I'd rather come back on Saturday," I said. "All right," she agreed. She didn't smile, but if she could, she would have smiled with joy to see that I wanted to go back to school so soon. But since she knew I didn't like studying, how could she understand why I wanted to go back? She probably thought it was some divine advice or something my father had told her. In truth, I wasn't enjoying myself, if by enjoy you mean laughing or having fun. And it wasn't rest either, because my mother made me study. And just like studying, I hated this whole situation. I had to sit still, book in hand, either in a corner or at the table. I cursed the book, the table, and the chair. I used a trick I recommend to lazy kids. I left my eyes on the page but let my imagination run wild. It'd go out there and catch the sparks from fireworks, listen to the music boxes, dance with girls, sing, laugh, pretend to fight just for fun, or however you want to call it. One day, I caught myself walking around the room instead of reading. My mother scolded me, and I told her I was thinking about my father. That explanation made her cry. And to tell the whole truth, it wasn't entirely a lie. I'd remembered the last little gift he gave me, and I started picturing him handing it to me with that loving look he had. Felicia was as sad as I was, but I have to admit our reasons weren't the same. She liked playing, but she didn't miss the games themselves. She didn't mind staying with our mother, sewing with her. Once, I even found her drying our mother's tears. I felt a little ashamed, and thought I should do the same. I put my hand in my pocket to get my handkerchief, but I reached in without any tenderness, and when I didn't find it, I pulled my hand out without sadness. I think that gesture lacked not only originality, but also sincerity. Don't judge me too hard. I was sincere for many days, even when I stayed quiet and alone. One time I wanted to go to the general store. It had reopened after the funeral, and the shopkeeper kept working like nothing had changed. I wanted to talk to him, watch him sell thread and needles, measure ribbons, go to the door, step onto the sidewalk, walk to the street corner. My mother stopped that dream before it could grow. I had barely reached the counter when she sent the servant to bring me back. I went back inside the house, back to my studies. I clenched my fist like someone about to punch something. Don't remember if I cried out of anger. The book reminded me of school, and the memory of school comforted me. I already missed it a lot. From far away I pictured the faces of the boys, our silly faces on the benches, and the jumps we made when we ran out after class. I remember one of those little paper balls hitting my face as something we used back then to wake each other up during class. I rolled my own and tossed it toward the kid I thought had thrown the first one. But like always, sometimes the ball missed and hit someone else. That third guy got mad fast and threw one back. A few other boys just made silly faces instead, too shy to join in. It wasn't exactly wild fun, but it was enough to keep me from getting totally bored. That time I had spent with Uncle Zeka felt like such a happy escape back then. Now, it seemed far away, like a dream I was afraid to lose. At home, everything was quiet. No parties, no laughter, barely any movement. I passed the time by drawing more cats and pigs in the margins of my reading book than I can count. It didn't cheer me up exactly, but it kept my hands busy. On the 7th day after the funeral, I finally got to go outside again for the memorial mass. I skipped school on Saturday and went to my godfather's house, where I could talk a little more freely. On Sunday I just stood by the store, watching people go by. But, full joy, that didn't come until Monday at school. I walked in wearing black clothes, and everyone looked at me with curiosity. But I was already so far behind my classmates in spirit that they forgot all about my sad, quiet time off. And I found a kind of happiness I hadn't expected on that didn't need holidays at all.
Thank you for listening so far. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like our channel and click the bell to be notified whenever a new book is read. Have you heard of Machado de Assis? Machado de Assis, born in Rio de Janeiro in 1839, is considered one of the greatest writers in Brazilian literature and a master of psychological realism. He was a novelist, poet, playwright, and short story writer whose works explore the complexities of human behavior with irony, subtlety, and deep introspection. Among his most famous novels are Dom Casmurro, which questions truth and memory, and the posthumous memoirs of Brás Cubas, a satirical narrative told by a deceased man. Machado's literature often reflects the contradictions of Brazilian society, addressing issues like race, class, power, and identity in a sophisticated yet accessible style. Despite being born into poverty and facing racial prejudice, Machado de Assis rose to become the president of the Brazilian Academy of Letters and a symbol of literary excellence. His sharp wit and profound observations about society and the human soul make his works timeless and universally relevant. Today, he is recognized not only as a Brazilian icon, but also as a world-class author whose legacy continues to influence generations of writers and thinkers. Machado de Assis shows us that literature can be both elegant and critical, intimate and universal, humorous and profound. His stories remain as powerful and thought-provoking today as they were more than a century ago. Machado is a treasure of world literature, and through his voice, we discover the infinite layers of the human experience.